this person, Tipu Sultan, was one of the most dynamic, one of the most interesting, one of the most advanced, progressive Muslim rulers to have lived in India. Guess what? Let me give you a shock. He is remembered and mentioned as one of the inventors of rockets. He is one of the first kings in history to have used rockets in metal casing. Rockets were used by the Chinese in ancient times, right? In bamboos. But this is the first time in history when rockets were used in wars in metal cases. And he used these rockets against the British colonial East India Company armies. And they were terrified. So the British realized this man has to die. He has to go. We cannot let him rule. If he rules, he will always pose a real threat to us, because this is not just another Indian ruler busy watching dance girls and smoking shisha. He saw a man with a heavy body, with reddish beard, who approached him, and he asked him, "Who are you?" And he told him, "I am Ali al-Murtada, Ali radiallahu anh." And he asked him, "What can I do?" And he said, you have to come with me. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam waiting for you, and he wants you to enter Jannah with him. This is a personal dream that he documented for himself. This was not for public. This was not advertised for people to know. This was a personal memory that he had noted. So he was a very special man.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to, we used to say, the most inconsistent podcast in the world, but actually we've improved quite drastically, mashallah, tabarakallah, the father and son podcast. Inshallah ta'ala, in this episode we will be discussing an illustrious figure in the history of Islam, namely Tipu Sultan. Before we discuss Tipu Sultan though, we do want to give you a background of what we've been doing previously on the Father and Son podcast. So previously, we just finished a brief history, of course, of the Mughals, their rise and their decline. And now what we've decided to do is we will be recording episodes on individual figures throughout Islamic history. Now, obviously, sometimes when people do this type of thing, they'll go in chronological order. Others may choose to do what we are doing, which is randomly pick out figures. Okay, and I feel like the random approach is also a nice approach, because sometimes you'll hear about figures you've never heard about. Like, for example, in this episode, many people probably won't be aware of Tipu Sultan and his background and what he done and who he even is, especially those people who are from Arab backgrounds, non-Indian backgrounds.
Correct.
Non-South Asian backgrounds. So without further delay, maybe you can give us, before we discuss Tipu Sultan, I think what's nice to do is give us the background of where Tipu Sultan, kind of the background of what he was born into. What is the political background? What was happening in India at the time, etc.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, thank you again for this podcast, Father and Son. And through this podcast, we will discuss, as you mentioned, a number of topics. We have just finished the Mughal Empire, and it is very, very correct to start talking about the dynasties or kingdoms that arose from the ashes of the Mughal Empire. We discussed the decline of the Mughal Empire in the last episode, right? So the Mughals kind of collapsed or declined in the mid-18th century. The decline of the Mughals as a power in the Indian subcontinent started in the 1750s, and it is then one of the dynasties that came to the attention of the Indian subcontinent, or the world for that matter, was the dynasty of Mysore, or the kingdom of Mysore. Now, current day Mysore is in southern India, the province of Karnataka, right? In the 18th century, Mysore was a small principality of around 33 towns or villages. Okay, it was a very small Hindu principality ruled by Wadiyar kings. Okay, then a man, an adventurer, a soldier of fortune, you can call him, called Hyder Ali, okay, joined the army of the Wadiyar Rajas, Hindu rulers of the principality of Mysore. And over time, Hyder Ali, he was a very, very able man, intelligent. You can call him shrewd and genius. He rose through the ranks of the military and became a general and eventually a sultan, eventually the king. He took power from the Hindu rulers and they were reduced to becoming basically rulers just in name, and Hyder Ali initially started to rule by their authority, but he was the de facto ruler of this small principality called Mysore. So when Hyder Ali took power from the Hindu Rajas, this was a small principality, but he made it into an empire. He was an absolutely genius leader, right? And time proved it. Later on, he took a lot of territory for the state of Mysore. He went into all sorts of directions. He fought the Marathas, a formidable power in India by this time in the 18th century. The British were rising. We have talked about the Battle of Plassey and the Treaty of Allahabad. We discussed it in the previous episodes. And the British are now already stretching muscles within the Indian political landscape. And now they are loggerheads with other powers, the Marathas, okay, and now Hyder Ali, the state of Mysore. So why am I talking about Hyder Ali? He is the father of the man Tipu Sultan,
Okay.
the person we will discuss in this episode today. So this was a very brief summary of
The political background.
the political background, because again, to repeat it, this state was born in this turmoil. We call the 18th century in India the century of turmoil, the century of chaos, because the Mughals collapsed, and as a result of that collapse, many local and foreign powers took land in India and made their own dynasties.
That's how it seemed. It seems like it was open season after the Mughals.
Well, anyone, the survival of the fittest
Yeah.
is the way to describe the 18th century India. The British took territory, the Sikhs took the Punjab region, Marathas took much of central India. Okay, in the north, the Mughals had token presence, militarily speaking. They were struggling to hold on to their power, and they were reduced to ruling regions around Delhi, the city of Delhi. And we had Nizam, okay, in the south, in the Deccan region. Then we had a very powerful Persian dynasty, or rulers originated from Persia, the dynasty of Awadh, okay, ruled by Shia Persian Shuja'ud-Dawla. Shuja'ud-Dawla was a very powerful figure, again in the 18th century. And one of the dynasties that arose from this chaos was the dynasty of Mysore, especially when Hyder Ali took over, okay, because the Hindu Rajas were not able to do what Hyder Ali was able to do. He made Mysore, the state of Mysore, a formidable power.
Okay. So Hyder Ali sounds like a very Shia name. Was he a Shia?
No. This is something we can discuss in, in due course, because when we discuss the religion of Tipu Sultan, we can highlight that point in more detail. But of course, you're absolutely right in pointing out that this sounds like a very Shia name, Hyder Ali.
It's as Shia as it gets, right?
But to mention now the background of the family, this family originated from the Arabian Peninsula. There are claims that Tipu Sultan's ancestors were Arabs. There are others who claim that his ancestors were Punjabis. Okay, they somehow ended up in southern India, and they were connected to a very famous shrine, Sufi shrine in southern India, the shrine of Khwaja Gaisu Daraz, right? So they were devotees of the shrine, the ancestors of Tipu Sultan. Okay, so Hyder Ali descended from these people. Of course, there was a lot of Shia influence in the south by this time, in the 18th century. Actually, there were two Shia dynasties there, the dynasty of Golconda and Bijapur. Okay. And they were subdued by Aurangzeb Alamgir. We mentioned this in the Mughal episode, right? Okay. So there was a lot of Shia influence around these regions, but Hyder Ali and his family did not come from the Shia background.
Okay.
And Tipu Sultan was a staunch Sunni Muslim. Okay. So a lot of people get this impression that they were Shia. No, they were not Shia. Okay, but they had contact with a lot of Shia soldiers, generals, clerks, secretaries, authors, poets. They were all over the place. So there was coexistence between the Shias and the Sunnis at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's get into, it was 1749, right? When Tipu Sultan was born.
No. He was born on the 1st of December, 1751.
1751.
Yeah. And amazingly, thank you for mentioning this. I would have forgotten this otherwise. For the last 200 years,
Yeah.
since the scholars have been writing on him,
Yeah.
the British and otherwise,
Yeah.
they got his date of birth wrong.
Yeah.
His date of birth
So what
for
were they saying his date of birth was?
1750.
1750.
1750.
I got that wrong as well.
Right?
I knew it was around 1750.
November 1750.
Yeah. Yeah.
But his date of birth was corrected very recently.
Yeah.
Guess by who? Any guess?
It was by you guys, right?
Yeah, I was a humble servant, okay, who was participating in a token way to correct the date of birth of Tipu Sultan. It was my dear friend, my teacher, my inspiration, a man called Nidin George Olikara. He's a South Indian Tipu enthusiast, an academic, a scholar. He's currently pursuing his PhD in South Indian arms, if I remember correctly. He is the one who realized that Tipu Sultan's date of birth had been incorrect for the last 200 years, because he found the original documents in Persian, okay, that state his correct date of birth.
Yeah.
Okay, one of those, and it was in plain sight. For some reason, scholars for the last 200 years could not figure that out. And it was left to people like Nidin Olikara. It was his honor to discover it. And I participated by translating those texts from Persian to English.
Amazing.
And so...
Is this what was published by the Royal Asiatic Society?
No, that was a different piece of work we both co-authored.
Yeah.
And that was on the medals of Tipu Sultan.
So this is published by Cambridge University.
Yeah, they was published by Cambridge
Royal
University Press, the
Asiatic
Royal Asiatic Society. But coming back to the date of birth, Nidin found this Persian text in Tipu's famous book that he had distributed in his army called Fathul Mujahideen.
Interesting.
Okay, so it mentions that on his date of birth there would be 31 gun salute.
Okay.
Okay, and when we calculated the date of birth stated there, it was basically coming to the 1st of December 1751, not November 1750. So since then, the date of birth has been corrected on record. It's corrected on Wikipedia. It was correct in the Islamic Arts Museum in Kuala Lumpur, because they ran a long, lengthy exhibition on Tipu Sultan.
Amazing.
This museum in Malaysia...
It's very significant.
Yeah. So it's a significant contribution, and I happen to participate in a token way as a humble servant, translating those texts. So Nidin George Olikara, he deserves the credit for this.
I remember when you mentioned this to me, I was very surprised. It's very surprising because even though some of our viewers, as I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, they may not be the most familiar with Tipu Sultan. Unfortunately, even some Asians, when you mention Tipu Sultan to them, the restaurant in Birmingham comes to mind. Right? Do you know about Tipu Sultan? Yeah, see, even Bakush knows
Unfortunately.
about that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying now that's
it's unfortunate that most people don't know this figure. And
think of a chicken korma when you hear about Tipu Sultan. That's terrible.
And it's an excellent restaurant. I mean, just to advertise the restaurant as well.
I mean,
without getting paid for it.
But imagine mentioning, I don't know, first name that came to my head is Ibn Taymiyyah, and you think
actually
of a restaurant.
there is a restaurant in Nottingham as well.
Yeah, called Tipu Sultan.
And it belongs to one of our distant relatives.
Okay.
Tipu Sultan, he has a franchise in Nottingham, and there's one in... And this is how British people often come across the name Tipu Sultan.
Yeah.
Okay, they don't even know this person.
Yeah.
But this person, Tipu Sultan, was one of the most dynamic, one of the most interesting, one of the most advanced, progressive Muslim rulers to have lived in India.
I recall.
So he was a very special king, very special person.
Yeah.
Must be studied.
Yeah.
Okay, generally by all Muslims. I would say Muslims from Morocco to Indonesia, they should study this man called Tipu Sultan. You will get many amazing, excellent ideas. He was an excellent, brilliant combination of religiosity, Islamic conservatism, and progressive, modern, state-of-the-art technological advancement. Okay, so he was well ahead of his times, as we will see in due course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good. I mean, maybe I'll ask you about this later on. But I remember when I was reading, just to show his significance, when I was reading Kate Brittlebank, her book Tiger, which is on Tipu
Excellent
Sultan.
book. Yeah.
She mentioned that when Tipu Sultan died, 1799, he was the most famous Indian in all of Britain.
Correct.
Right, which shows you significance. Now, people may be wondering, okay, most famous Indian, what are you talking about? I mean, in the 18th century, India was very, very relevant for the Brits.
Yes.
Okay, and obviously people, when they do their research and stuff, they can
He
find
was
out.
by far
Yeah.
the most covered Indian Muslim ruler in the 18th and the 19th century.
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah.
Now, this is shocking, isn't it? But amazingly, most Muslims don't know about him today. The Arabs in particular are not very aware of him. As you mentioned earlier, non-Indian Muslims are not aware of him.
I would assume they don't know. They don't have a clue who he is.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And how to get to know him? There is a basic book, very brief book, by Kate Brittlebank, an Australian academic. She is an expert on Tipu Sultan. She has authored this very short book, a short, summarized biography of Tipu Sultan,
Yes.
titled Tiger. Okay,
Yes.
Tipu Sultan of Mysore. Okay, so you can get an idea of his life in this book. Okay,
Yeah.
so Tipu Sultan was a very special figure.
Let's
and
go
he
to
was,
his.
just coming back to your point
Okay.
on how he was covered by British press
Okay.
or British academics or historians at the time when he was alive.
Yeah.
There were books being published in London when Tipu Sultan is alive ruling Mysore.
Okay.
And he was not being covered positively. He was
Okay.
being painted by the British press, by the British authors and British reporters as a tyrant, as a villain, as an enemy, and with some admiration as well. And he was seen as a real threat to British colonialism in the Indian subcontinent. To understand this, you must get this book titled Confronting Colonialism, okay, edited by Irfan Habib, the famous Muslim historian from the Indian subcontinent. I'm pretty sure he's still alive. And he's the son of the famous, again, medieval Muslim historian, Muslim historian of medieval India, okay. His name was Muhammad Habib. So Irfan Habib authored these 2 volumes or edited these 2 volumes on this very topic. And in these 2 volumes, he discusses how Tipu Sultan was a formidable, a very important opposition to the British colonialism in India. Okay, so he was covered extensively, books upon books, pamphlets upon pamphlets, reports upon reports were published on him. And you have seen some of those books in our library, right? You were shifting them in the new bookshelves recently without looking at them. I'm pretty sure you didn't know what books you were carrying. Some of those books you were carrying from one shelf to another are some of the rarest works published by the British on Indian history. And they are specifically discussing Tipu Sultan.
Interesting.
Right? So he was definitely by far the most famous Indian ruler, Muslim or otherwise, covered by the British press, the British authors. And he fascinated British psyche. He absolutely fascinated because he was so advanced. He was so advanced. He was so sophisticated as a man, as a king, as a ruler, as an intellectual, okay, as a general. His state was state-of-the-art modern state, and we can discuss that in more detail.
Definitely. So let's do this. Let's go in order of his life. That's what we can simply do in summarized fashion.
Inshallah.
So he's born 1751. Can we get some water? If possible. 1751, he's born. Jazakumullah khairan. 1751. And I recall reading, and we can go straight into this, right? His upbringing, the way in which he was raised was as if he's being prepared to rule.
Absolutely. No doubt.
So tell us a little bit about that.
You see, Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan were 2 rulers, Muslim rulers of the state of Mysore. Because after Tipu Sultan was killed in 1799 the state of Mysore was handed back over to the Wudiyar rulers once again.
Yeah.
Okay, so the British could not afford to put one of the descendants of Tipu Sultan on the throne, although that prospect was seriously discussed. Okay, after Tipu Sultan was killed in the Battle of Seringapatam, 1799. Okay, so Tipu Sultan had fought effectively in 4 wars against the British colonial establishments. Okay, 4 wars. There were 4 Anglo-Mysore wars. You can go and Google Anglo-Mysore wars and you will see 4 of them. The first war started in 1766, the first Anglo-Mysore war, and that was led by Hyder Ali. Then the second Anglo-Mysore war started in 1780 and it went on until 1782 when Hyder Ali died and Tipu Sultan became the king of Mysore. And there was a third Anglo-Mysore war that happened between 1790 to 1792, which Tipu Sultan lost because 3 armies came to fight him, okay, and he lost half his territory, okay, and 2 of his sons were taken into custody by the British establishment, in particular at that time led by Cornwallis, General Cornwallis, who had taken 2 of Tipu Sultan's sons as hostages until he paid the ransom. Okay, so Tipu Sultan lost that particular war. And then the 4th Anglo-Mysore war was in 1799, which resulted in Tipu Sultan's death, his martyrdom. He was killed on the battlefield, fighting hand-to-hand battles with British soldiers or soldiers who came to fight for the British East India Company. So why am I mentioning this? I'm mentioning this to highlight the fact that Tipu Sultan's entire life, since he became an adult, was fighting wars.
Yeah, I mean, when he was 15,
he was born in a war zone, right? Imagine the Mughal Empire has declined and India is going through a chaos. There is loot, literally loot. The word loot that we used to have a newspaper in the UK, I don't know if it's still around. Is loot still around? The word loot actually comes from India.
Yeah.
Loot means to plunder.
Yeah.
There was literally a plunder going on in India in the 18th century when it comes to territory. Anyone who could get his hands on a castle or 2 or a fortress or any territory, they would take it. There were many independent or semi-independent princely dynasties that rose from the ashes of the Mughal Empire. And Hyder Ali, a soldier of fortune, okay, at that time managed to get his hands on to the state of Mysore. And this is when Tipu Sultan was born. Mysore was already in the middle of this conflict zone. Marathas are rising. There is Hyderabad, the state of Hyderabad, ruled by Nizam, okay, and the British in Madras, okay, in Surat, and Fort William, which was Calcutta. So these were very big supreme powers in India at the time, military powers. So Hyder Ali, obviously, he had to assert his power. He had to show himself to be a good ruler, an effective ruler. And to able to show your power at the time, you had to fight wars.
Yeah.
It was inevitable. You could not avoid conflict because others would come into your territory and they would take your territory. And there was a lot of back and forth going on. Okay, there was a lot of back and forth going on. Territory was taken, territory was lost. This, kind of the maps were changing in a very dynamic way.
Yeah.
Okay, the maps of states and dynasties were changing every month almost, right? So this was a very, very disturbing period when Tipu Sultan was born in the middle of a war zone. So he was born into this family in 1751. He was born to a lady called Fatima, who was the mother of Tipu Sultan. And he was raised to be a strong character. Hyder Ali was not educated himself. He was unlettered. Okay, he couldn't read and write. He was not, but he was a genius. Historians to this day say, and I'm inclined to agree with them as a student, that Hyder Ali ruled from his mind and Tipu Sultan ruled from his heart. Hyder Ali was a more shrewd politician as well as a ruler.
Interesting.
Tipu Sultan was a more passionate kind of ruler who made mistakes due to his not character flaws. I wouldn't call them flaws, but his
methodology.
his methodology or his way of dealing with people. Okay, so Tipu Sultan was a different ruler, but again, the world remembers him, not his father. You understand? The world remembers Tipu Sultan. Hyder Ali is known because of his son, Tipu Sultan. Okay, because he gave his life on the battlefield. He died fighting.
This guy's a joker.
He's probably thinking that I'm going to be known by you. Yeah.
So
It's not a bad ambition.
yeah, of
You should
course.
aspire to be so great and do so well that people know me by you. I'm happy to be in that situation.
100%.
But
You know, there's a saying-
I'm neither Hyder Ali nor are you Tipu Sultan. So let's make our own mark.
I mean,
let's
speak for
make
yourself.
Adnan Rashid and Musa Adnan. Okay, right?
Speak for yourself, you know. I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm only
Yeah.
joking. No, but you know,
But I wouldn't like to be in that situation. To
You
be
know,
honest
there's
with
a
you,
saying-
even if in hindsight,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Would I like to be in a situation where I have to rule territory and be a king and lead armies? No, I wouldn't like to be.
It's a big responsibility.
Oh, absolutely. Would I like?
can't
I mean,
imagine it.
having read their history, would I like to be in that situation? Absolutely not. It wasn't easy. But they were born in those times. They were made for those times. We are made for different times. If we were to live in that century, I don't think we would last very long, right? Because it was a very difficult time. Strong, as they say, chaos creates or produces strong men, and luxury and ease creates or produces weak men.
You know, there's a saying that it goes something like, you know, people want good for you, but never better than themselves. But the only people that want you to do better than themselves are your parents. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe
100%.
maybe we can extend that to teachers as well and others as well,
yeah.
etc.
Absolutely.
But so Tipu Sultan, we've mentioned. So some of the things I recall. It was a long time ago when I read this part of the book, Kate Brittlebank's Tiger, but I remember her mentioning that in his young age he was taught the Quran.
Yeah.
He was taught Persian and Arabic. He
His
would have
mother
been
tongue was Urdu.
Yeah.
Okay, amazingly.
Yeah.
And it was slightly different because it was in the south. Okay, it was more likely to be Dakkani.
What does that mean? Like,
Dakkani is like Hyderabadi Urdu,
and what's that like?
and it's slightly different to the northern Indian Urdu. Okay, the Urdu language spoken in Delhi and Lucknow is slightly different to the language spoken in the south, in Hyderabad.
Is it like an accent difference?
It is an accent difference, and there is some vocabulary differences as well.
Fine.
Okay. So Tipu Sultan's mother tongue was Urdu, but he was taught Persian. He was fluent in Persian. He also knew Arabic. He also tried to learn French.
And this is something.
So he was educated diligently. His father didn't want his son to be unlettered like himself. So Tipu Sultan received very, very intense education as a young child or a young man, right?
Yeah.
And then when he was 16 or 15, he saw action for the first time in his life. His father put him in the thick of the battle to lead cavalries and armies, and he did. By 17, Tipu Sultan was leading cavalry charges in the thick of the battle.
At 15, I remember reading there was a cavalry he led as the army general.
Yeah.
And then his father came and backed him up.
Yes, correct.
With his own cavalry, which is like it's ridiculous when you think about it, 15 years old.
No, as a father, imagine he's putting his son
Yeah.
in the middle of the battlefield with an army where he can easily get killed when he's 15. So again, strong men create strong men.
Yeah.
They produce strong men. So he, through his child, his son, in this situation, for him to be trained, not only help his father politically, but also to become an effective ruler in the future, because this is what he was groomed for. And then Tipu Sultan, from that time onwards, when he was 15 years old, when he saw action for the first time in his life, until his death, he was in action. He did not
kind of
rest. The
constant.
man did not rest. You know, he died 49 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, he was born in 1751 and he died in May 1799. So that's around 49 years. Okay, out of those 49 years, you can say minus 15.
He
You
has
know,
a famous saying, right? I'd rather live one day
as a lion.
as a lion
Yeah.
than 100 days or something
Yeah,
as a sheep.
that we will address when we talk about his martyrdom. This he said on the battlefield
Yeah.
before he was killed. But before we get to that, so he, as a young man, was trained not only academically but also in military arts, and he led battles. So he understood weapons, he understood strategy, he understood how to lead an army, how to be an effective general. Okay, he lost battles as well. He lost multiple battles with his father, of course. Okay, Marathas defeated Tipu Sultan and Hyder Ali multiple times. Okay, and they, of course, beat the Marathas as well in many battles. So there were a lot of battles taking place. There was a lot of political strife and conflicts. As I mentioned earlier, the map of India was changing almost every month, right? Because these internal, local and foreign powers were struggling for territory. India, Sikhs, the British, Sikhs, and Marathas and the Mughals, and then Hyderabad, the Nizam and Tipu Sultan. These were very big powers at the time. Okay, so Tipu Sultan kept fighting throughout his career to not only stay in power, but to sustain his territory, because he was being threatened by the British, by the Marathas, and by the Nizam. So these were three major powers he had to fight continuously. So the first two Anglo-Mysore wars he had fought with his father. The third and the fourth Anglo-Mysore wars he fought alone as a ruler against the British, the Marathas, and the Nizam.
So when did how old was he when his father passed away?
His father passed away in 1782.
Okay.
Hyder
fine.
Ali passed away while the second Anglo-Mysore war was coming to an end.
So he would have been around 30 years old when
He was around 31 years old when he came to power. Okay, and the coronation took place, I think, when he was 32. So he was pretty young as a ruler, right? And when he took power, all of this responsibility fell on his shoulders. Now he had to lead battles and lead campaigns and expeditions to ensure that there is no encroachment. It's a funny example, but it fits. Lion King.
Yeah.
You remember those scenes when Mufasa is taking Simba with him to show him his territory. And then while he's doing that, Zazu, the bird, comes to him and tells him that there is encroachment. The hyenas are encroaching in your territory, and he goes and deals with the hyenas.
You remember this better than me. I can't even remember this.
Yeah, I'm giving this example because people can relate to it, right?
I can't remember
Okay, this is exactly what Tipu Sultan was doing all his life. Okay, he was dealing with hyenas encroaching in his territory.
Fine.
Right? And sometimes he even gained territory when he had to kick out these hyenas, right? Whether they were the British colonial East India Company armies, or whether they were the Marathas or the Nizam's army. So he was a noble man. Okay, he was a much better ruler than his counterparts, his contemporaries. And
From
he
what
was
perspective was he better?
Okay, now we can talk about, because we don't have much time, unfortunately, otherwise this episode can go into 3 hours, 4 hours, discussing just Tipu Sultan and his virtues and his weaknesses, and there were many, no doubt, right? But he was an absolutely genius ruler. He was personally a genius, very spiritual man, very religious, very, very much dedicated to his faith, Islam, right? And he used to pray diligently. He used to have dreams of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, and this came to light when he had been martyred. When he was killed in the Battle of Seringapatam, 1799, they found a diary in his bedchamber, which was only for himself. He was writing his dreams in that diary. It was a notebook. It was a personal notebook that can still be seen today in the British Library. I've had the pleasure and the honor of actually physically handling the original.
Do they still let you do that?
Yeah, you can do that. If you are a researcher and you are looking into it, they will let you do it. Okay. And credit is due to Ursula Sims Williams. She is the curator of Persian collection at the British Library, and she was kind enough to let us handle these original documents.
That's crazy.
And I actually physically, personally handled Tipu Sultan's personal Quran. The Quran he was personally reading from. And it is in a red box. A red box, you have to look at things in a red box on a separate table. You cannot take any pictures of those things.
Oh, as in the British Library red
In the
box.
British Library, yeah. So I handled that Quran. So coming back to the diary, this diary was found in his bedchamber, and it had never been seen by anyone else before. So when they opened the diary, they saw notes and memories written, and there were over 30 dreams documented, and few of them basically highlight that he was having dreams of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, in one of the dreams that I remember, I even shared it on my X account, Twitter. Okay, he saw a man with a heavy body, with reddish beard, who approached him, and he asked him, "Who are you?" And he told him, "I am Ali al-Murtada, Ali radiallahu anh." And he asked him, "What can I do?" And he said, you have to come with me. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam waiting for you, and he wants you to enter Jannah with him. This is a personal dream that he documented for himself. This was not for public. This was not advertised for people to know. This was a personal memory that he had noted. So he was a very special man. Okay, and he wasn't doing it for public to see. You remember, similarly, our ancestor, Sheikh Minhajuddin was noting his dreams in his personal copy of the Quran that we found later on. Once we removed the cloth cover of the copy, the Quran, we saw in Arabic there are 4 dreams he had, and he had documented those dreams. This is our ancestor, my and Musa's ancestor, and he documented his dreams. Amazing stuff there. Similarly, so this was common practice. People would document the dreams in their personal books and diaries, right? So he was a very religious man, very accomplished religiously, also in terms of education and technology and advancement. So he had a vast library of 2,000 books. So after he was killed, his library was assessed. He had all sorts of books, predominantly books on Sunni persuasion, Quran manuscripts, tafsir and hadith books, Sunni hadith books, okay, and a lot of stuff on tasawwuf, okay, because Sufism was common, very common in India at the time. It was the mainstream, persuasion, Islamic persuasion in India, as we know from history, right? So he was a very dedicated Sufi Muslim. Okay, he had a large collection of Sufi literature on Adhkar and Tazkiyatun Nafs and character development and stuff like that. So as a character, he was a very, very noble man. Okay, it is known about him that even while bathing, he wouldn't take his clothes off. Okay, he would keep on, enough clothes so that his body he's not naked, right? Also, there's an anecdote I would like to, highlight in this regard. Kings back in the day, they had palaces and they had harems. In these harems, they had multiple women, many of them concubines, right? So his father had a large harem, Hyder Ali. When he died, there were ladies in the harem that belonged to him or his harem. So once he went to visit his mother, who also lived in the harem, okay, and it got late, his mother insisted that he remains behind and sleeps in one of the chambers. So while he was in the chamber, she sent in 2 female servants to see if he needs anything, to serve him, right? And they started to massage his feet. And he woke up to it. And he was furious. He was absolutely furious that, who are you? And they said, "We are servants. We are just, serving you." And he said, "You are my father's women. You belong to my father's harem. How will I show my face to my father on the day of judgment?" Yeah. And he became so angry that he wanted to punish both of them severely. Then the mother got involved. She said, "No, I am the one. who's at fault. I'm the one who sent them to see if you need any anything.
It's crazy.
Right? So this shows the level of his religiosity and the honor he had for his father. Okay, it was common practice for the kings to have concubines in the harems, and this was very well known practice at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, in pre-modern times, this was very common. Okay, so this shows the level of his dedication to his faith and his principles.
Yeah.
He was a very principled man, and when he married two women at the same time on the same day. Why this happened? His father wanted him to marry a woman. His mother wanted him to marry another woman. So they decided that why don't we get him married to both of them? Islamically, he can marry 4 wives, right? So he married to 2 women to please his parents on the same day. And he had many children, of course, and he had multiple sons.
This is great stuff.
Okay, so yeah, Musa likes this. Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
It's great stuff.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to try
When
something
are you
like
guys?
that. I don't mind if you can handle it. Okay, perhaps you should have a word with your wife first.
You're gonna get me in trouble now.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so this was an amazing character, religiously speaking. There's a lot I can say about his religiosity.
Yeah.
He was so religious that he produced a text to advise his soldiers, Muslim soldiers in particular. It was called Fathul Mujahideen.
The one that has his date of birth in it.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a couple of copies of it. It was published in 1950 by, edited and published in 1950 by a scholar called Mahmoud Hussain. And the text was published in Persian, printed from manuscripts. Amazing stuff. So how the work starts is by advising a soldier, every soldier, Muslim soldier in his army, on morals and ethics.
Yeah.
Okay, principles. You have to be principled. Just because you're a soldier, you can't just go and loot and pollute and kill and be ruthless. So there are instructions on being a good soldier.
Yeah.
There are instructions on prayers. There are instructions. So the book starts with moral instructions, Islamic instructions, and then it goes on to strategy, formation of lines, and how to carry weapons, and march songs, war songs, and stuff like that. Very interesting text, right? That I want to study and produce research on, inshallah. Okay, so this gives you a level of understanding of his religious dedication. He was very Islamic. Even when he sent envoys to foreign countries, he gave specific instructions to people in these embassies who traveled to these foreign lands. And one of the instructions was, all of you must pray 5 times a day. No one is going to miss Salah. This is clearly documented.
Allahu Akbar.
Okay, so this is Tipu Sultan. But so what? People will say, so what? There are many religious kings who came and died. So what's so special about him? So he wasn't just religious. He was also a very progressive, modern, sophisticated man. Okay, so he was a combination of Islamic conservatism, Islamic dedication, Islamic religiosity, as well as a highly advanced man. Guess what? Let me give you a shock. He is remembered and mentioned as one of the inventors of rockets. He is one of the first kings in history to have used rockets in metal casing. Rockets were used by the Chinese in ancient times, right? In bamboos. But this is the first time in history when rockets were used in wars in metal cases. And he used these rockets against the British colonial East India Company armies. And they were terrified. They were terrified of his weapons and his war tactics. So one of the things he used to do when he would use guns to fire cannonballs at the opposing army, he would throw in blades and shrapnels that came from his factories producing swords and weapons. And it's not only the cannonball falling on the opposing army, it's the shrapnels, sharp blades, and he would inflict major damage to his enemies, right? And he also had this new technique he used. He would attach with the rocket a sword blade. So instead of having a base for the rocket to fly straight and land straight, his rockets would land spinning. So while they're spinning, before landing, they would cut few soldiers. So those blades, and those specimens can still be found in some Indian museums and even some British museums. Didn't George Olikara, my dear friend and my teacher, we have specifically co-authored this research piece that was published by the Royal Asiatic Society through the Cambridge University Press. In this piece, we discussed Tipu Sultan's medals. He was so advanced in the 18th century, he was planning to give medals to his military ranks. And not only military men, he was giving medals for performance to civilians also, right? So even water carriers were given medals, okay, or at least there was a plan. We found a manuscript. Nidin found this manuscript with the Asiatic Society of Calcutta. It had been noticed but never studied. So he brought it. We translated it together during COVID. Okay, it was translated from Persian to English, and then we wrote a historic commentary on it, and thankfully the Royal Asiatic Society published it. So this shows you the level of his sophistication on these matters. So he was a military genius.
Yeah.
Okay, he was an innovator, militarily speaking. He tried new things, new methods, new strategies. So even today, if you go to the Rocket Institute in the US, his name is mentioned as one of the inventors of modern rocket. So these rockets you see flying around, Elon Musk putting out rockets in all these countries with sophisticated weapons or warheads with rockets. Tipu Sultan takes all the credit for that, okay, for inventing that. So he was, in that sense, he was very advanced. In the 18th century, we're talking about 1700s, when most Indian rulers are smoking hookah, shisha, and watching dance girls. Most Indian rulers, Hindus, Sikhs, and one exception may be Maharaja Ranjit Singh. One exception maybe doesn't get anywhere near Tipu Sultan when it comes to. But Maharaja Ranjit Singh also similarly tried to use modern technology, and he hired European officers in his army to train his soldiers. Similarly, Tipu Sultan did the same thing before Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Maharaja Ranjit Singh was born in the year Tipu Sultan was killed, 1799.
Interesting.
Okay, so. Maharaja Ranjit Singh was born in 1780, and he took Lahore in 1799. He took Lahore, the city of Lahore, in 1799 when Tipu Sultan was Shaheed, when he was killed in battle. Okay, so Tipu Sultan was well ahead of his times. In fact, there is an anecdote when he had given an order for guns to the French. The French produced those guns in their factories, and they shipped them to his capital, Seringapatam, right? When the boxes were opened, he said, "What rubbish is this?" And the French said, "What the hell are you talking about? This is top of the range. This is the top brass weapons ever produced in the world," right? He said, "Okay, let me show you some top brass weapons." So he took them to his factories in Seringapatam, and the French said, "We cannot match this. You are way ahead of us." And today, when you see his weapons in museums, they are so sophisticated. Looking at the time, okay, for his times, he was far ahead of the British and the French in the quality of weapons he was producing in India, in southern India.
It's crazy.
It is very sad that someone like Tipu Sultan is not being appreciated by the Indian government today as one of their sons. It's very sad. They are losing out.
One of the fathers, actually.
Oh, well, it depends on who's talking and where he's talking, right? But Tipu Sultan was one of the sons of India, the Indian subcontinent. He was born in India, he ruled in India, he died in India. And he died for India, albeit for his own territory, because that's all he was responsible for. He wasn't responsible for Nizam and what the Sikhs were doing in Punjab or what the Marathas are doing in central India. He was only responsible. India to Tipu Sultan was the state of Mysore, not what others ruled, right? So he was very, very effective ruler in his territory. He innovated on many different fronts. Apart from weapons and rockets and state-of-the-art technology, militarily speaking, he invested in agriculture, cattle farming.
And he ruled a majority Hindu laity, right?
Oh yeah, the majority of his subjects were Hindus, and they were very prosperous. This was the richest state in India in the 18th century.
Why do you think they didn't try and do a coup, like try and
The
get rid of
Hindus,
him? Yeah.
they were very pleased with him. They loved him. They loved him very much. And he gave grants to temples as well. He actually served the Hindu people. Okay? Because he was the ruler of Hindus. Hindus were paying him taxes. So he returned, he reciprocated for his subjects, right? So he gave grants to the temples as well. The money came from the Hindus and it went back to Hindus for that matter, right? Okay? So he was a man of his people. They loved him. They loved him. They wanted to have him as their ruler. And when he was killed, his entire population was crying. You know, they would have been happy. They would have been waving for the colonial powers or the Marathas and the Nizam's army to come in and thank you for liberating us from this tyrant. No, they were so upset. They were so devastated by this loss. And we're talking about Hindus more so than Muslims.
Okay.
Because they were the majority. Hindus were the majority in Mysore. And there was a survey produced in 1807 by a man called Francis Buchanan. Okay, he was told to do a survey of the state of Mysore. And he found the state of Mysore to be the most prosperous state in India. It was well organized.
Wow.
It was, so diligently ruled that every single department of the state was designed and supervised by the Sultan himself. He was a micromanager. We know that by studying his seals. Okay, we have found a manuscript that we are working on and it's going to be published hopefully soon. Okay, in this manuscript we find the designs of the seals for his government departments. So there are elephant stables. There are separate seals for elephant stables. It's called Field Khana. Then there is Shutar Khana, where the camels are kept, stables of camels, seals for that. There is Darud Darb, the mint, for example, where the coins are minted, separate seals, departmental seals, multiple seals for the same department, and each department is split into different sections, and each section has its own seal with its own personal message, a prayer, an invocation to Allah, a dua or a verse of the Quran, and a message for the department. And each department has its own seal, and each seal has something relevant from Sharia mentioned on the seal. So if it's elephants, there is something from the Quran about elephants. If it's camels, okay, there's something about, for example, the seal on camels mentions Saleh. It's called Saleh Yar, the friend of Saleh, okay, because it is for the camel department. So we're going to look into this and we're going to publish this very soon in more detail, right? And then there are seals for military departments. Each military contingent has its own seal, has its own identity. So his departments were so sophisticated and so delicately organized that we were completely blown away when we came across this stuff. So this was the most modern, by far, this was the most modern state ruling Indian territory in the 18th century. Muslim or otherwise. It happened to be ruled by a Muslim king, right? So Tipu Sultan is a hero for all these things. You can't just dismiss him and call him a Muslim bigot. He never brutalized Hindus. He never went after Hindus trying to force them to convert to Hinduism or anything like that. And he only punished people when he found them to be traitors. That included Muslims, Christians, and Hindus. When they sided with the enemy, he had no mercy. He had no mercy. it didn't matter what religion they came from. So he punished Muslims, he punished Hindus, he punished Christians for siding with the enemy. Okay, he had alliances, foreign alliances. He had a strong French military presence in his capital, not only training his army, but also as allies. He corresponded with Napoleon Bonaparte.
Wow.
He was exchanging letters with Napoleon Bonaparte and inviting him to come and help him in India against the British.
Wow.
He wanted to damage the British colonial ambitions globally. Now, let me shock you. The American War of Independence. The Americans are fighting the British colonial rule in the US, what we call the War of Independence, right? The Declaration of Independence took place in 1776. Guess what? There was a battle called the Battle of Delaware in the 1780s, right? And there were 4 vessels from each side. The American side had 4 vessels. The British side had 4 military naval vessels, right? And these are warships.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the warships on the American side is called Hyder Ali. Check it. Check it out.
That's so interesting.
The Battle of Delaware. It was a naval battle.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
What?
So the Americans called one of their vessels Hyder Ali after Tipu Sultan's father, because him, Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan were both sending help, financial and otherwise,
So they can
to the
smash the Brits.
American independence movement. And this is why Thomas Jefferson, when he was in France, the founding father, one of the founding fathers of America, he met Tipu Sultan's embassy in Paris. And there is a letter, if you Google Thomas Jefferson's meeting with Tipu Sultan's embassy, you will see the actual letter. It will come up. And it mentions specifically that...
He's going up, yeah.
And what's the year of the Battle of Delaware? 1787 or 1784?
1782.
1782, the Battle of Delaware, right? And the vessel was called Hyder Ali. There you go. It's confirmed. So I'm not just making this up. This is crazy stuff, isn't it?
Yeah,
people don't know about it. This is how far
his influence was.
It's
unbelievable.
He was communicating with the Turkish Sultan.
Yeah.
He was communicating with Napoleon Bonaparte. He was communicating with other monarchs, kings. He was communicating with the Americans. He was also communicating with the king of Afghanistan, Shah Zaman at the time, to get military help from him against the British. So the British realized this man has to die.
Yeah.
He has to go. We cannot let him rule. If he rules, he will always pose a real threat to us, because this is not just another Indian ruler busy watching dance girls and smoking shisha. Okay? Yeah. So this is so powerful now. Check this out. So the British now, that's why they are so terrified of him. They're so scared of him. They are so interested in him that they are publishing books on him in London when he's alive. In 1790, I have books in my library you've seen from 1780s, originals. I collect them, right? And they are on Tipu Sultan. 1790s books on Tipu Sultan. Early 1800s books on Tipu Sultan. Multiple works. So he absolutely fascinated the British and the British psyche at the time. So for that reason he had to go. And then the British decided that they want to...
They raided him, isn't it?
Basically, the last Anglo-Mysore war in 1799, he could not resist these 3 armies that came to attack him. They attacked his fortress while he was inside, and he chose to die. He chose to fight and die. When he was on the battlefield, fighting hand-to-hand combat against soldiers that came with the British East India Company army, he was told by one of his servants, Sultan, escape. You can escape. There are many escape routes. Just escape and fight tomorrow. Live today, fight tomorrow. And he said to him, when he heard this, "Are you mad? Are you mad? Have you ever seen me run?" In other words, have you ever seen me escape? This is a man, when he heard that the northern wall of his fortress has been breached and he was about to have his food on that day, and he was inspecting his army and his military defense just before that, and he was about to have food, and he heard the news of one of his generals was killed, very beloved to him, and he cried when he heard that. And he had a morsel in his hand, and he put it down, and he said to his generals, "It seems our time is limited." In other words, he knew he's going to die, and he had chosen already to die. So he goes out riding his horse, fights hand-to-hand combat with British soldiers. Okay, and there was this drama produced in the 1980s in India called The Tiger of Mysore or Tipu Sultan, something like that. And Sanjay Khan, an actor who played Tipu Sultan. And the last scene of his fall is unbelievably filmed. It's something to see, right? That scene is so amazing, how they showed him fighting when soldiers upon soldiers were coming into his fortress, and he's like going like a tiger attacking them, you know. And he actually, Tipu Sultan was absolutely, amazingly fascinated by tiger as an animal. His favorite animal was tiger, to the extent that every single thing he did had to have tiger stripes. His swords, tiger stripes on the blade. His guns, tiger stripes on the butt, okay, or on the barrel, okay, or there's a crouching tiger, okay, on the trigger. So amazingly designed. Some of these specimens we saw personally, myself and Nidin, in Malaysia not long ago, in the Museum of Islamic Arts. They had this exhibition running until March 2026. I think it's finished by now, but it was an amazing exhibition. This museum effectively bought his regalia and his objects from all around the world, from British auctions, from international auctions, and they spent millions of pounds. They just bought one sword for 14 million pounds from a British auction, and it's called the bedchamber sword of Tipu Sultan. This particular sword was found in his bedchamber, and it was given to one of the British generals as a gift, called General Bade, and then the personalized message was written on the blade, and then it was sold by the family in one of the British auctions in early 2000s for 100,000 pounds, and recently it sold for 14 million pounds, and it was bought by the Islamic Arts Museum, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. This is how much dedication Malaysians put into Tipu Sultan. Amazing. Because they had realized his importance for Islamic history in general and Indian history in particular. It is sad that Indian government is not paying that much attention to this man.
It's good they're not, man, because these people...
Just to add to that, breaking the all-time world record for any Islamic and Indian object sold at an auction. SubhanAllah.
So that sword broke the world record. Okay? Amazing.
Yeah. For what? For what?
For Islamic and Indian objects sold.
For Islamic and Indian
objects sold at an auction. It broke world record. 14 million pounds.
So you know what I want to mention is honestly
there's a lot we can talk about.
No, there's so much to talk about, and this has inspired me to actually tonight I'm gonna order my own books, and I'm gonna actually ask you about that on Tipu Sultan, so I can do my own notes and stuff like that on him. What's mentioned about his death, right, is that he was wearing a belt and it had some jewels on it.
Yeah.
And the soldier tried to grab his belt, so he struck the soldier with his sword. This is a very
famous depiction painted by many British painters as well, that you see the Sultan striking a British soldier with his sword while the soldier is reaching out for his belt. Okay, this is actually what happened. As per the testimony of one of Tipu Sultan's personal servants.
And the soldier who killed him, what ended up happening is after he struck the soldier, then the soldier shot him dead.
He was already shot. Tipu Sultan was already shot in his side and in his arm. He was already injured, okay? And while he was injured and he was obviously on the floor, one of the East India Company soldiers saw him, and he saw his belt, which was studded with precious gems. So naturally, he reached out for that belt to take it as loot, right? As booty. So Tipu Sultan was still breathing, he was alive. And when that soldier tried to do that, even in that state, when he doesn't have to do it, Tipu Sultan struck him with his sword. And the soldier stepped back and shot him in the temple. Okay, and that was the shot that killed him.
And they mentioned that the soldier who killed him didn't even know he is Tipu Sultan.
No, he
at
didn't
the time,
know.
right?
The soldier had no idea this was Tipu Sultan he had just killed. Okay,
SubhanAllah.
and he was killed, rahmatullah alayh,
Ameen.
and he was kind of buried under a lot of other bodies. Okay, so the British came looking for him when his fortress was completely taken over. They came looking for him. They couldn't find his body. Okay, so he chose to die in this.
So we don't know where he's buried.
No, we know where he's buried. I'm going to come to that.
Okay.
So when he was killed, when he was in the battlefield, when his servant said to him, escape, and he said, are you mad? Okay. And then he made this famous statement,
Yeah.
a day of a lion is better than 100 years of sheep.
100
Right?
years of sheep.
This is documented by Major Beatson, okay? Alexander Beatson, who published a book in the year 1800, literally months after his martyrdom.
Yeah.
He came to London and he published this book, War with Tipu Sultan. I have that book in my library. Okay, in that book, he mentions that Tipu Sultan's servant, he narrated these words from Tipu Sultan, that Sultan said this on the battlefield when he was told to run away. Okay, so the reason why he's special in the history of Islam in particular, and the history of India, okay, is because of this. He could live a life of luxury. He could live a life of ease. He could just make terms, or he could submit or surrender to the British and maybe live in prison or live on pension, maybe get exiled or something like that. He didn't choose that humiliation. He chose to die. Fight and die, specifically himself, right? He could easily escape, right? But he chose that path. And this is why he's remembered as Tipu Sultan Shaheed, the martyr. And Muhammad Iqbal, the poet, he paid him lavish tributes. Tipu Ki Wasiyat is one of his poems. Okay? Tu rehna varde shok hai, manzil na kar kubul. Layla bhi ho hum nashin to mehmil na kar kubul. Jue aab बढ़ के हो दरियाए तुम दो तेज साहिल तुझे अता हो तो साहिल ना कर कबूल सुबह अज़ल ये मुझसे कहा जिब्राइल ने जो अकल का गुलाम हो वो दिल न कर कबूल बातिल दुई पसंद है हक ला शरीक है शिरकत में आना हक हो बातिल न कर कबूल. This is a very lavish, beautiful tribute Muhammad Iqbal paid to the legacy of Tipu Sultan, saying that don't accept ease, go for hardship, and don't, follow an intellect that follows heart. Okay, sorry, don't follow a heart that follows, akal ka jo ghulam hai wo dil na kar kabul. Okay, you have to live by heart, not necessarily by rationality all the time. So this is what the poet is trying to say here. Okay, and he also, Muhammad Iqbal visited his tomb in 1933, if I'm not mistaken, and then it was either 1929 or 1933, I don't remember exactly. He visited his tomb because he was lecturing in Bangalore at the time, and he wanted to visit Sarangapatam, where Tipu Sultan was buried. Okay, so before I get to Iqbal's visit, I want to mention, coming back to the martyrdom of Tipu Sultan. So when the British came looking for him, they couldn't find him in the palace, so they knew that he is somewhere, either escaped or dead, right? But one of his private servants identified that I know where his body is, and he has been killed. So they found his body. Alexander Beatson specifically mentions that when they found his body, he was very warm. His body wasn't cold, and he had a lot of dignity on his face. And he describes him in the following words. Having seen the dead body of Tipu Sultan, okay, he describes his appearance. And I'm going to read that word by word. It's one of the best descriptions of Tipu Sultan's last looks. I read it here somewhere. Right. Yeah. So he writes, Alexander Beatson, who published this volume titled View of the Origin and Conduct of the War with Tipu Sultan. Okay, he described him as follows. His stature was about 5 feet 8 inches. He had a short neck, square shoulders, and was rather corpulent. His limbs were small, particularly his feet and hands. He had large, full eyes, small, arched eyebrows, and an aquiline nose. His complexion was fair, and the general expression of his countenance not void of dignity. Right? This is the man who discovered his body personally. So his body was moved to the palace, and of course the palace was devastated. His wives, his daughters, his sons were completely devastated to have found his body like this. And the British went plundering, absolutely open season to plunder the city. Okay, and guess who was leading the campaign? One of the generals, the famous Duke of Wellington. The famous Duke of Wellington, who later on defeated Napoleon Bonaparte in the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. This is a very important figure in British history. You see statues all over London, right? Duke of Wellington, check him out, right? He was personally present in this campaign, and he decided to warn his soldiers to stop looting, and he had to hang a few of them to stop the looting. Because looting went on, rapes, looting, pillaging, plunder, everything was going on. His palace was looted, soldiers took swords from his treasury, daggers, other objects, everything was looted. It was looted so much that later on, in the military camp, in the British military camp, there was a market, there was like a bazaar where British collectors and rich people went on to buy this stuff. And Lady Clive, who was the daughter-in-law of Clive of Plassey, she was buying a lot of this stuff. And she bought this stuff, and today a lot of this stuff, these objects, can be found in Powys Castle in Wales.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm yet to see that stuff. It's just crazy that I haven't seen it. So I want to see it as soon as possible. So after this, he was buried the next day.
Yes.
Okay. The British military gave him honors. They took him to the grave, and something crazy happened. As soon as he was buried, with all the honors and salutes and everything, yeah, because he was a sultan who died fighting bravely on the battlefield. As soon as he was buried, there was a wild storm in the city of Seringapatam, or in the region. British soldiers died in large numbers. Animals were flying around. The wind was so strong that one of the British officers, he mentions in his memoirs that I would rather face 100 sea storms. When you get shipwrecks.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Okay? He said, I would rather face 100 sea storms than face this one storm. This is how bad it was. As if Allah was expressing His wrath on what had happened. And this was a huge expression of nature speaking about it, right? In my opinion. I believe he was one of the awliya of Allah. I have no doubt that Tipu Sultan, in spite of being a king, was one of the awliya of Allah. Allah had chosen him to do something. He did his job, and he died as shaheed. Allah. And you know what? That dream that he had, that Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anh came to collect him. He loved Ali radiallahu anh absolutely daily. And this is why some Shias claim that he was Shia. But religiously, as I mentioned earlier, he was a staunch Sunni of Sufi persuasion. And we know for a fact that he was not Shia for a number of reasons. One of the biggest reasons is when you look at his coins, okay, they have denominations. They're called by certain names. His gold coin, the heaviest one, in value and in weight, was called Ahmadi, after the Prophet ﷺ. The one below that, half the weight and value, was called Siddiqui, gold. So 4 pagodas are called Ahmadi, 2 pagodas called Siddiqui, 1 pagoda is called Faruqi. What is he doing here?
Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Umar radiallahu anhu.
The Prophet,
You definitely
Abu
know.
Bakr, Umar. Okay. Then you have, for example, Haydari, an Imami. His 1 rupee is called Imami. His 2 double rupee is called Haydari. Okay. And then he has a coin called Uthmani as well. And then, of course, some of the Ahlul Bayt. Okay. There is a, there's a small coin called Abidi, Zainul Abidin. Okay. There is one very small denomination called Kadhimi, after Imam Musa Kadhim.
Kadhim.
So he admired the Sahaba, his Aqidah. He's demonstrating his Aqidah
Yes.
in his coins. So he starts with the Prophet,
Then Shaykhain.
then Shaykhain, then the Sahaba, and then the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. Subhanallah. So he's honoring all these people from the Prophet's life. So this is his Aqidah in his coinage. And again, I have some of those coins, not the gold ones. They are very expensive to acquire. So I have his rupee and double rupee in my collection. And his coins are very, very rare because Indian collectors are mad about them. They want to buy them every time they surface. So all of this is very important. Okay. And again, we can go on and on and on talking about Tipu Sultan and his legacy and his virtues and his achievements. But this 1-hour podcast is simply a summary.
It's a taster to get people inspired to read more and actually educate themselves much more.
I didn't mention a lot of things.
No,
There's a
so
lot.
much
There's
more,
a
so much
lot
more.
of stuff that I can mention. Okay, I didn't mention a lot of it. Unfortunately, I can't because the time doesn't allow it. Allow us. And I would like people to go and read books on him.
This is the last question I want to give you. Give us 3 books that you'd recommend on him.
Number 1, Kate Brittlebank, The Tiger.
Tiger. Okay.
Okay, Kate Brittlebank, an Australian author. She has written this book. Number 2, Muhib al-Hassan, The Life of Tipu Sultan. Very important book, very detailed.
Okay.
It's a bit dry because it's filled with
Facts.
details, facts.
Okay.
But it's amazing.
Beneficial.
It's an amazing book. Okay. Then Denise Forrest. Okay. Again, The Life of Tipu Sultan, The Tiger. Also, we can look into, if you mentioned 3, you asked for 3 books. I would say these 3 books are very good.
Okay.
There are books in Urdu, and there are more books in English. Okay. Then if you want to read a contemporary biography of Tipu Sultan that was written by someone who knew him personally and had served under him, this is Mir Hussain Kirmani. Okay.
It's in English?
It was authored in Persian in the early 19th century. Okay. And there is an English translation.
Okay.
Yeah, Mir Hussain Ali Kirmani. Okay. It's called Nishane Haydari. Okay. The sign of Haydar, basically, right? It's an excellent biography of Tipu Sultan. And later on, Tipu Sultan's, one of his sons called Ghulam Muhammad, who died in 1870, he also, published a biography of his grandfather and his father. Okay. And Tipu Sultan's sons and his family were then exiled to a fortress town called Vellore in southern India after the defeat of the state of Mysore, and the state was handed over back to the Hindu family that ruled it originally as a small principality. Okay, and then it was reduced again to a small principality. Okay, and Tipu Sultan's family was moved to Vellore. They remained there until 1806. Okay. In 1806, they rebelled against the British rule, and this was the first rebellion against the British colonial rule. Many people think this is the first rebellion. It's a meaningful rebellion. Okay, and Tipu Sultan's sons were directly indicted, and then they were moved from this place to Calcutta, current day Calcutta. Okay, and most of them died soon after. They died of malaria.
Do we know of any of his descendants now?
Today there are his descendants in Calcutta. Some of them are lawyers. Some of them are highly educated people, others are just labor workers, they're like rickshaw cycle drivers, and
Seriously?
yeah, and some are tailors. So unfortunately, financially, economically, they're not very prosperous.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but they are direct descendants of Tipu Sultan in Calcutta today. Okay, and this was a large family in the early 19th century. So
Yeah.
until 1850s, they lived in relative prosperity. Okay, the entire family, because of course Tipu Sultan had many sons. Those sons had children, and the family kept growing.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you want to see a detailed genealogy of Tipu Sultan, there is this website titled. Subhanallah, forgot the name of the website. It mentions the genealogies of royal families.
If they Google it, maybe it'll come up Tipu Sultan genealogy.
Yeah, something like that. It will come up. Okay, or his descendants, Tipu Sultan's descendants, and there's a website. I forgot the name of the website. Subhanallah, I was looking at it the other day. So it has the names of his children and the women they married, and then their children and their children. Okay, so by 1870, when Tipu Sultan's last and the youngest son died, Ghulam Muhammad, who lived the longest, okay, then his family kind of went into poverty and economic decline. Yeah.
Okay, we'll end on that note, inshallah ta'ala. Brothers and sisters, Jazakumullah khairan for watching. And it's been a very, very inspirational episode, actually. One of the most inspirational ones that we've done, actually. And I do think that we gave justice to giving you a chicken nuggets worth of
Absolutely.
of like a brief insight into his
It was brief, yes.
into his biography, as these things usually are. And obviously, if you want much more, then you need to read, and goes back to the importance of reading and all of that, which is in a whole other episode. We'll leave it at that, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.